We often think that we're overwhelmed because life is so busy. And yes, life is busy, but here's the real reason we are overwhelmed. It's the noise in our minds. Regardless of what's going on externally, it's the noise in our minds, and here's why most of our minds feel overwhelmed. Let's start with the amount of information we put into our minds these days, the information that we see, that we read, that we think about, that we consume, particularly with our virtual worlds. We don't even know now what is real, and yet the amount of information we consume increases. With the use of AI, the amount of ideas we're having and the things that we're getting through productively increase. There is so much load now that goes in here. And that's not even work related. We can have looked at so many things, had so many thoughts, put so much pressure on our brain, all in the first 30 minutes of waking up, if the first thing we do is reach for our device. The devices that we hold, the media that we consume, the Netflix that we watch, all of that overwhelms our mind unless we're intentional about how we use it and how often. And of course, that links to the self-talk that's going on in our overwhelmed minds. Most of the conversations we're having in our brains, we're having with ourselves, and they're not always that productive. And it can be ignited by the media we consume in terms of how that makes us feel, or the thoughts that we have. But it can also come from within. It can come from a lot of those childhood patterns that we're not even aware of that are still impacting us at a subconscious level. The self-talk that we have, particularly if we're unable to regulate that, is another reason our minds are overwhelmed. And ironically, when I talk about all this digital connection that we have, disconnection is a reason our minds are overwhelmed. Disconnection from our sense of self. Disconnection from the present moment, being hung up in every other place other than the place we actually are. Going over the past, worrying about the future. All of this overwhelms our minds and takes us away from the present that often brings us that calm, grounded centeredness. And it doesn't just end there. Our minds are also overwhelmed because we don't sleep properly. Sleep should be something natural, innate in all of us as animals and human beings. You look at your pets, they do not struggle to sleep, but we have so many stresses that most of us these days struggle to sleep, and it should be one of the foundational things that helps switch this off, that helps reduce the noise, and then of course the overwhelm in our minds, the inability to rest, our always on culture, this constant connection with a device or the outside world or the noise. All of this adds to our overwhelm in our mind. But also it's the perception, right? The perception of what other people think of us, other people's ideas, experiences, the comparisonitis. That also feeds in to the overwhelm that goes on in our mind. Back-to-back meetings and to-do lists that are not aligned to our priorities or our values, that increases the overwhelm in our mind as well. Particularly if everything on that to-do list feels like an emergency, which often it does because of the way we live our lives and the way we run our workplaces. And yet, in reality, most of what's on our to-do list is not an emergency, is not life or death, and some of it doesn't even matter that much to us. And so when we start to realign our priorities, when we start to focus on what matters, when we start to disconnect from the noise and the busyness and reconnect with ourselves and the present, when we start to make space in our schedules, we sleep better. When we stop worrying so much about the things we can't control, all of this helps us reduce the overwhelm. But hopefully that's given you an insight. If your mind feels overwhelmed right now, your life feels busy, then there's some of the reasons why, and it gives us the opportunity to know, where do I start then? What are some of the quick fixes? Where are the things that I can dial down some of that overwhelm in my brain? And that's what I love helping people with.